Awesome. All right. I'm really excited about this one. This is about quieting the monkey mind and coming out of anxiety. I'm just going to dive in because we have 20 minutes and I just promised to keep this really short and but just really effective. And this is something that comes up with a lot of different sessions that people are in anxiety and fear. And I really want to address this on multiple levels, not just the some. What I usually tell people is that I'm really not the best person to help you deal with something like anxiety, but I'm one of the best people that can help you heal and get down to the source of it. So I've got a couple of notes here about it. The opposite of anxiety is certainty. So the question is, why are you uncertain? And have you been in alignment or in integrity with yourself? And I know, like, any time that I was thinking back on my life when I've ever been anxious or had anxiety and fear, it's usually because something traumatic happened in my life and I didn't know how to process my emotions, or I had made decisions that were coming out of some kind of egoic need. Um, or I was making decisions out of fear or worry that if I don't do this, then this bad thing could happen, or if I do this, then it'll be better for me. More of a logical kind of a state, and those kind of things are where I'm relying on my own mind. And it's if I really start to ask myself if that really makes sense, and knowing what my mind is capable of and not capable of, it doesn't make any sense for me to ask my mind to make decisions for me. So I think that's been like the crux of the whole problem is that we've put so much emphasis on relying on our mind to guide us and direct us. And if I know anything about the mind, if what I understand about it is the mind is really good at labeling and categorizing and analyzing and judging, but it doesn't really care about truth. It doesn't put that into its equation. So here we are, we're trying to go through our life and we want to be guided by truth, or at least our inner truth. And we listen to the thoughts of our mind. And it's just it doesn't really add up to ask our mind for guidance in that. We want to really actually want to use our heart, which is our feeling sensing organ, and listen to that, listen to how it feels to us. And like here's an incident that just happened. I came into the studio and I got myself a red eye coffee. So when I'm drinking my coffee, it's got a shot of espresso in it. Gets my heart going a little bit, and then of course the thoughts come up. What are you going to talk about? You should talk about this, talk about that, and all these thoughts are it's like the turbocharge of my thoughts. But what I do is that I realize that my thoughts are starting to come up, come up, come up, and then I start to focus on my heart. And if I need to, I just take two fingers and tap on my heart, just to kind of take me back to that center. And I think about like a little white dot in the center of my heart that every time that I take a breath in, that little bright light gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when I focus on that, I start coming back to my center. And I'm reminded that the way that it works is I stand here in awareness, and this is the truth of me. And I can say this by saying, I am. When I say I am, God, that feels so good. It feels so good just to put that out there. It's like you can feel it in your body when you say, I am. And there's so much going on there. It's saying, I exist. I am enough. I'm here. And then being the mind has a hard time with that. It wants to add on to I am. Okay, that's good, but what else are you? At least say you're a good person, or that you're wise, or that you're stupid, or whatever the thing is. It wants to add on to that. So, but if I pull back on that, then I start to come out of this anxious state of always being led by my overactive mind. So I start to pull back into this more of a centered awareness place, and then that is actually what I am. When I look into that and I realize that that is all I'll ever be. That is all I ever was. And I will always just be this conscious awareness, not an aware being, but just awareness. And even though I start to go in that my mind has this anxious place, it has to go forward, but I still come back to it and say, no, this is what I am, and that's enough. So I just want to kind of plant that seed there and let that kind of stew a little bit, because that is something that the mind, already has a hard time with. So let's just let that cook for a minute. So again, anxiety comes from identifying and choosing to believe and seeking guidance from an unstable egoic mind. Doesn't that sound crazy? That that's what we do, that we actually choose to believe. Like I remember, and it's really hard for me to really sink into what I was and who I was back then, but I was really insecure and that what it showed was being very jealous and not trusting the partner that I was with at the time. And man, I did some goofy, crazy stuff out of that insecurity. And of course, I look at it now and I go, God, that's so crazy. But when you're in it, it's a different story, and then your mind is just going and going and going. So if I could kind of pair the two together, how I am now and how I was then, I would just tell myself, you're doing the best that you could at the time with the awareness that you had. But I was just moving. That's how life becomes when you're moving directly from the mind. And if I would have had someone that would have talked to me and said, listen, Daniel, all these thoughts that you're having, you are choosing to believe. So there's crazy thoughts that your girlfriend is cheating on you and she's with this other guy and da 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 da. But you're choosing to believe that. And it's sort of like these thoughts will come up and they'll get energy from your attention. And it's kind of like we're presented to these thoughts across our awareness. And anytime we kind of look in that direction and go, yeah, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But what we can do is it's a practice of allowing those thoughts to be noticed. Yep, I understand that you want me to think about this, but I'm going to just kind of let that settle back down. And this is something that happened with my beloved, with Valerie and I. And it was it was a culmination of working on this and processing my emotions and my insecurities, so that when Valerie came into my life, she's this adoring, nurturing, loving, affectionate, beautiful soul. And I've told this story so many times, so forgive me, but I heard and felt, I'd say you were aware of these thoughts. And the thoughts were telling me, she's too adoring. Don't you never want anyone to put you on a pedestal. Remember that. And she loves you too much, and that's not healthy. All this BS of these thoughts. Here's this woman that wants to completely love me like I want to be loved, and that I've said all my life in other relationships. How come I can't get someone that really truly loves me and is present with me, and that we can adore each other? And I realized that I had been listening to my thoughts. I'd been, paying attention to them so much that I believed them, and I took my identification of myself with my thoughts. I'm the one that gets betrayed. I'm the one that gets abandoned. And so there's a sticky point in there, that if we identify ourselves, that I say, I, Daniel, am the one that is the thought, that is the belief, that is the emotion. So we kind of go through life that no one tells us otherwise. And so we believe it. And it's very insidious. It's very convincing of the mind to get us into this, it's we move into this sort of partnership together, and we get bigger, and our ego kind of grows and grows, and it starts to guide every part of our life. But there's a certain time something will happen, and that something could be an ayahuasca experience, it could be toad medicine, it could be LSD, it could be meditation, it could be breath work, it could be a life-threatening situation on the edge of a cliff. Something that breaks that connection for enough time so that you can get the reality of what you are. And you know, I've chosen to have many of those to like I guess I'm pretty stubborn. I needed multiple times to help me keep on um, coming back to that reality of what I really am. So what's happened is that once I start to open up that crack of awareness of the mind instead of identification of the mind, then my anxiety started to lessen and lessen, and that crack just got bigger and bigger and wider and wider. And so now it's, you know, thoughts still come up, of course, but now I look at it instead of just going like, yeah, let's go. Now I look at it and I call it on it. You know, I turn my attention to it and I say, you know, basically in my mind, I see you and I know what you're trying to do, and you have no more control over me. So I've had this conversation. I know this sounds kind of weird, but I've had this conversation with my mind, and it went something like this. Listen, you've never been qualified to run my life. You're not really suited for knowing the truth and for guiding me in the direction of my life and knowing what's really best for me. You really could give a shit. You really don't care what's best for me. And so here's what's going to happen. Whenever I need to judge something or analyze something or categorize or label something, I will call on you. In the meantime, I'm going to shrink you back down to the size that I created you at, and I'm going to put you here on my hip. And I'll keep you right here and we're going to work together, but you're no longer going to run my life because I now know that my heart and my feeling state of my body is what really can guide my life in a better way. So it's like once I did that, of course the egoic mind and the anxiety crept up, but now I had some little space between myself and the identification with my mind. So here's another truth. You do not thrive in chaos, but your mind does. Think about that. You, the one that is aware of your thoughts, the one that is aware of your mind, does not thrive in chaos, but your mind does. Your mind is kind of this, especially your egoic mind. What I'm talking about is that it's kind of right on the edge of looking for something to help identify you. The one who is abandoned, the one who is betrayed, the one who is the suffering, and that is not you. That is this part of you, this aspect of you, but is not the entirety of you. And here's another one that I know this is. I like to kind of rock the boat, I guess, a little bit. So I've come up with this idea that, and this feels pretty true to me. 99% of the thoughts that my mind comes up with are probably not true, and that's what keeps me in kind of in step with this idea of and this living life with very little anxiety and fear. I would almost say none. Uh, is this realizing that as I'm walking the world, as I'm sitting in a chair, as I'm speaking with my beloved, a thought will come up. And instead of just engaging with it, I first bring in the memory of the idea. Hold on a second. Your thoughts are probably not true. Whatever it is that you're thinking about yourself or about Valerie or about my friend or about my mother or father, it's probably not true. It's probably not based in reality. It's probably some perception. And yes, some perceptions can really benefit us and serve us, but to call them true is not really helping me. So what does help me is to say, this thought that's coming up, just hold on before you completely surrender to this thought. Just remember that it's probably there's 99% chance that it's not true. So then what I do is I pull back, hold on a second before I engage in that. Then I check in with my heart. What does my heart feel? What does my body consciousness feel? And do I need to engage with this thought and go forward with it and speak the words connected with that thought? That I need to assert myself in a certain way and have this egoic personality just, come out like this? Or should I just pull back and just process that for a second? Where did that thought come from? Where did this reaction come from? Is it something that's making me feel a certain way, and so I need to respond or react in a certain way? I pull back and say, okay, this is what's happening. Something's bubbling up here, and I can start to process that. And now I can start to heal it from the source. So that if I keep on doing that, then I start settling down into certainty instead of anxiety. That I know that I have this process that keeps me more centered and more present. So the other reality is that you are not the one who is anxious. So I've kind of touched on that a little bit, but um, the truth of you is not the one who is anxious. It's your mind that is anxious, and you're the one who's aware of it. So that helps me also kind of keep myself in the dream, but not completely lost in the dream. So I'm here to experience reality and the whole, every part of it, every second of it, but with a knowing back here that says, don't forget who you really are. All right, let's see what we got. I went through that. Okay, so here's another piece, and this can be kind of challenging, but what I've seen working with people is that for the most part, people who are experiencing fear, anxiety, or worry, or any of those kind of unsettling emotions, they find themselves actually attracting more of those. And to put this into a point, sometimes I do breath work with people and they're trying to get through anxiety and they come in with a cup of coffee. Isn't that the craziest thing? It's like, it's kind of shows me that it's somehow they feed into that somehow, like the decisions that they're making, not completely knowing that they're making this decision, but somehow in the subconscious, they're making decisions that create a task or something that is going to be full of anxiety, or they get themselves into a job or career that is a stressful, anxious job. So there's a certain element of us taking responsibility for the choices that we make in our life, so that we have less anxiety. And I see a lot of that in the past where I've um, caused multiple things to happen all at the same time. And in those moments, I made those choices to take on too many sessions in one day, or take on too many sessions in 1 week, or put myself out there too much. So little by little, I've made those decisions to create more anxiety in my life. So part of that process is learning how to love myself enough to only choose the things that I'm excited about. And this is something that I learned from Michael Hamilton from Angel Valley, that he would just constantly, not constantly, but he would invite me to follow my heart and follow my excitement. And I know that this is the real epidemic, my friends, is that a lot of us are living life through guilt and obligation. And we're so worried about looking like an asshole or looking like somebody that doesn't care and isn't compassionate for other people, that heaven forbid that we do something that is exciting to us and we live our life that way. But that is the thing that really was the kicker for me to pull myself out of a life with anxiety and fear and worry and guilt and obligation, is to start thinking about myself, not in a selfish way, but in a centered way, in a feeling way that says, if I say yes to this, am I saying yes to this because of some obligation or some fear that someone won't love me anymore if I don't do this? Or is it something that I'm doing because I'm really excited about it? And that's how I go into all my sessions, that I don't say yes to sessions with anyone unless I'm excited about it. And I can feel that I'm out of integrity with myself if I do say yes when I really mean to say no. And that's where the anxiety comes from, is not really being in integrity with yourself. And it's a very kind of elusive kind of thing sometimes, that you can't really pinpoint it. You don't know that it's really happening, but you think that how you're living your life through some guilt and obligation is just the way you should do. You should do this, but inside, it's creating this anxiety, which basically says you've been out of alignment. and you've been out of integrity with yourself, and you put too much emphasis on being in integrity with other people because you said yes to them. Man, that is, I can feel the power of that that I've put so much emphasis on staying in integrity with other people, and with that, I can feel the obligation there. And it's, don't get me wrong, it's a very valuable thing to be in integrity with other people, but I feel now that the most important thing is to be integrity with myself, because I'm not fooling anybody by being in out of integrity with myself and in supposed integrity with another person. That's a big one. All right. So before I know we're out of time, but I want to really shoot out some real, because I'm more practical too. So I want to give you some practical tools for staying and healing anxiety and fear, which, can lead to depression. Um, the foods that you eat, make sure that you have blood sugar stabilizers. When I say no, I mean very little or no. So keep that in mind. No fried, caffeine, sugar, or alcohol. Seaweed, whole grain, blueberries, B12, B6, flaxseed, chamomile tea, nuts, pumpkin seeds, edamame. Meditation, breathing exercises. Form close knit human bonds. Seek laughter and fun. Get enough sleep. And what I would do is I would work until, in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning on the computer. And if I'm on the computer all the time, I mean, I can't really question why I have anxiety if that's what my lifestyle is. So check that. Get enough sleep, release emotions somehow without judging. Listen to inspiring and relaxing music, drink great water all day, question your fearful thoughts, be deliberate in what you focus on, and get outside on the land. You can imagine, like, on the one end of the scale, that someone that's indoors all the time and they're maybe watching a little bit of shows and they're on the computer a lot, and then you have another person that's going outside, listening to music and drinking lots of water, and it doesn't have a lot of caffeine and sugar in their life. There's a whole wide spread between that. So I like to sit in there somewhere closer to this edge over here of more time on the land and more music and more expression and releasing my emotions, whatever way that works for me. Sound healing, breath work, crying, laughing, all those things kind of keep that energy flowing. So I hope that was great for you. I hope that I gave you some good tools. I really wanted to keep this in about the 20 minutes that I promised you. So have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon. All right, see you everybody. Love you. Thank you, and bless you.